They thought it was just another patrol, another day crossing the quiet farmlands of eastern Ukraine. Engines hummed, dust rose, and confidence filled the air. But that silence wasn't peace. It was a trap. Within moments, calm would turn to chaos, and a single operation would remind the world why the name Azov strikes fear across the front. The war in Ukraine had become a slow, grinding storm, a clash of endurance where victory was measured not in kilometers gained, but in how long you could survive the shelling. Towns that once rang with laughter now echoed only with the thunder of artillery. Smoke and ruin painted the horizon, and every road, every tree line hid the shadow of death. Yet even in this brutal stalemate, brilliance can emerge, a flash of strategy that cuts through the monotony of war. Near the shattered remains of the village of Prosk, that brilliance belonged to the Azov Brigade, one of Ukraine's most hardened, battle-scarred, and unbreakable units. For weeks, Azov's scouts and drone operators had been watching the same scene unfold below. A Russian platoon, roughly 40 men strong, supported by several armored vehicles, patrolled the same route every few days. Predictable, repetitive. They moved through the same roads, checked the same intersections, and stopped at the same ruined gas station before turning back toward their base. It was complacency, and in war, complacency kills. From the air, Ukrainian drones traced every movement, marking coordinates and timing each patrol to the minute. Analysts back at the command post began to see a pattern, a rhythm, that could be broken with one perfect strike. The terrain near Prosk offered everything they needed: wooded patches, shattered buildings for cover, and farmlands wide enough for firing zones but narrow enough to trap vehicles. By late evening, the plan was complete. Every man in the Azov team knew his role. Snipers would take the high ground inside the ruined houses, overlooking the dirt road where the convoy would pass. Machine gunners and RPG units would hold the flanks, hidden behind walls and wreckage. Engineers had already set the trap: anti-tank mines buried beneath mud, pressure-skingered charges wired to remote detonators. They called it Operation Silence. As the sun sank behind the broken horizon, the Azov fighters moved, quietly, deliberately. No shouting, no orders, just gestures, nods, and the faint hum of radios turned to their lowest setting. The sound of boots against the soil was barely audible over the distant rumble of artillery somewhere beyond the tree line. One by one, the units melted into position. A sniper climbed into a bombed-out farmhouse, laying his rifle across a cracked windowsill. A pair of machine gunners crouched behind an overturned tractor, its metal shell now serving as armor. In the distance, a small recon drone circled lazily above the tree line, its infrared feed streaming to the commander hidden inside a makeshift command post beneath camouflage netting. Then, silence. Minutes passed, then an hour. The air grew heavy with stillness. Each man controlled his breathing, heartbeats slow and steady. They had done this before, but no matter how many ambushes they'd survived, the waiting was always the hardest part. Finally, just past dawn, movement appeared on the horizon. Dust clouds, engines. Through their scopes, the fighters watched as the Russian platoon rolled into view. Armored truck in front, 2 infantry fighting vehicles behind, and dismounted troops walking in a loose column between them. The Russians were relaxed, weapons slung over their shoulders, laughter on their radios. They were deep in safe territory, or so they thought. From the command post, the Azov leader gave the order, a single word over the comms: patience. The convoy rolled deeper into the trap, engines echoing through the hollow ruins. The lead vehicle passed the broken gas station, the same checkpoint they'd crossed countless times. Another 30 meters and the signal flare would go up. The commander's finger hovered over the detonator. He waited, counted the seconds, watched the feed. Then, now, the explosion tore the morning apart. A flash of orange erupted beneath the lead truck, the blast flipping it into the air and slamming it onto its side. The sound was deafening, a thunderclap that shattered the stillness. Instantly, Azov unleashed hell. Machine guns opened up from both sides, cutting down the first ranks of infantry. Snipers cracked off shots with surgical precision, dropping Russian soldiers before they even hit the ground. RPGs whooshed through the smoke, slamming into armored vehicles and sending fireballs skyward. The Russians froze. Screams echoed through the chaos as their formation disintegrated. Some dove for cover, Others tried to return fire, but every direction they turned led into another kill zone. From above, drones recorded the spectacle, the ambush unfolding like a choreographed inferno. Every position, every movement had been planned down to the second. Those who ran into the tree line triggered hidden mines. Those who tried to call for reinforcements were silenced before their message could reach anyone. Within minutes, the battlefield was unrecognizable. Flames roared where armored trucks once stood. Smoke twisted into black columns that reached the sky. The road was littered with wreckage, rifles, helmets, and the lifeless forms of soldiers who'd never seen the danger coming. Azov's commander surveyed the scene through his binoculars, his voice calm over the radio. Phase 2, advance. From the flanks, Azov assault teams moved in. They stepped through the smoke like phantoms, clearing positions one by one. Their movements were efficient, practiced, the result of months of combat discipline. 15 minutes. That's all it took. 15 minutes to turn a confident Russian platoon into scattered survivors running for their lives. The confrontation was over, but the echoes of it were only just beginning. When the smoke cleared over Prosk, the battlefield revealed a scene of steel and ash. Armored vehicles reduced to twisted husks, rifles fused to the dirt, and the air thick with burning fuel. In less than 20 minutes, one Russian platoon had been wiped out. For the Azov fighters, the victory was tactical and symbolic. Every explosion and shot sent a single message: you are not safe here. Ukrainian reconnaissance sifted through wreckage, recovering documents, maps, and radios, while drones recorded the aftermath. By noon, clips of the ambush were circulating online. Grainy drone footage first appeared on Telegram, then clearer infrared videos showed explosions and soldiers fleeing. Ukrainian media and Western analysts hailed the operation as intelligence-driven, asymmetric warfare, precision and timing defeating size and firepower. A NATO advisor summed it up: this is what happens when a professional unit fights an unprepared one. In Russia, the reaction was chaotic. State TV largely ignored the attack, but military bloggers blamed commanders for negligence, accusing them of moving without drones or scouts. Families demanded answers as social media filled with outrage and speculation. The Kremlin downplayed losses as a localized engagement, but satellite images and independent footage told a darker story. Blackened wrecks and towering smoke. Inside Ukraine, the ambush sparked a surge in morale after weeks of grinding attrition. Videos of the burning convoy circulated in barracks and cafes. Soldiers felt the fight had renewed meaning. Kyiv's statement was measured. Every meter of Ukrainian soil will be defended. Yet commanders privately worried about sustainability. How predictable had the enemy become? Could the tactic be repeated? And when would the opponent adapt? Prosk's wreckage sat like a shrine for days. Craters pooling rainwater, boots half buried in mud, charred metal glinting under a gray sky. An anonymous Azov fighters line went viral. "We don't fight for headlines. We fight so our children can wake up free." It became a rallying cry. But every victory carries a shadow. Once a tactic is exposed, it can be countered. Prosk had shown the power of modern warfare's dual fronts, the physical and the informational. And in doing so, it shook more than territory, it shook confidence. The victory at Prosk wasn't just another headline, it was a message, loud and clear. But in war, every triumph carries a shadow. For the Azov fighters, the ambush's success was only the beginning of something far more dangerous. As Ukrainian soldiers cleared the battlefield, word came through intercepted Russian communications. A counter-separation was already being planned. Drones picked up increased activity east of the kill zone. Convoys moving at night, artillery batteries shifting position, reconnaissance aircraft scanning the same sector Azov now occupied. The hunters had become the hunted. Commanders inside the Azov Brigade knew what was coming. Prosk had humiliated the enemy, and humiliation demands revenge. Within hours, they began to dig in, reinforcing the ruins, laying new mines, preparing for a retaliation that would test every ounce of their endurance. But something else lingered in the air: uncertainty. Intelligence suggested the Russians weren't only coming with guns, they were coming with propaganda. Already, Moscow's media channels were twisting the story, calling the ambush a terrorist attack, claiming civilians had been caught in the crossfire. Fabricated photos, doctored videos, disinformation flooding the digital battlefield. The fight wasn't just for ground anymore, it was for truth itself. And as the sky darkened over the smoking fields of Prosk, Azov's soldiers knew that the real battle hadn't ended with the last explosion. It was about to begin again, fiercer than before. One fought not just with weapons, but with will, resolve, and the belief that their story would outlive the noise. The Russians didn't wait long. 3 days after the ambush, the night sky above Prosk lit up again, this time with the glow of vengeance. Artillery shells screamed through the darkness, slamming into the ruins that Azov had turned into their fortress. The ground shook with each impact. Walls crumbled and the horizon burned orange against the black. For hours, the bombardment never stopped. Then came the infantry, fresh troops advancing under the cover of smoke and dust. Drones buzzed overhead, searching for any sign of movement among the debris. The Russians were no longer overconfident. They came, heavy, cautious, and furious. Inside the shattered houses, Azov's fighters waited. They had expected this. They wanted this. Every approach road had been re-mined, every open field sighted in. And when the Russian advance reached the edge of the village, Azov struck back with precision born from experience. Mortar fire erupted from hidden pits. Snipers opened up from new positions. The village became a maze of traps. Every alley, every doorway, a test of nerve. The enemy's push faltered almost immediately. Russian units, disoriented by smoke and shrapnel, found themselves walking straight into pre-sighted kill zones. Vehicles hit mines and erupted into fireballs. Communication broke down again, radios drowned in static and panic. It was a grim echo of the ambush days before. Only this time, Azov was fighting not to surprise but to endure. The battle raged deep into the night. One Azov team, pinned under relentless shelling, held their ground inside a collapsed building for nearly 6 hours. Their ammunition was running low, their commander wounded, yet not one of them withdrew. Instead, they used captured Russian radios to feed false coordinates, luring enemy artillery to strike its own advancing troops. By dawn, the counterattack had lost momentum. The Russians, bloodied and exhausted, began to pull back, leaving behind a trail of wreckage and dead. The air was thick with smoke and silence once more. Azov had held again. When the sun finally broke through the haze, the scope of the battle came into focus. The landscape around Prosk was unrecognizable, a wasteland of churned earth and shattered steel. But amid the destruction, the Ukrainian flag still fluttered over the ruins. Medics moved swiftly, treating the wounded and carrying their fallen comrades with quiet reverence. Drone footage later showed Azov fighters walking through the wreckage, rifles slung over their shoulders, faces streaked with soot and fatigue, but eyes sharp, defiant, alive. For the second time in a week, Prosk had become a symbol. Word of the defense spread just as fast as the ambush before it. Social media filled with new footage. The same village, the same soldiers still standing. Western commentators called it the defense of the impossible. Military analysts noted how Azov's adaptability turned the enemy's strength against itself, proving once more that intelligence and resilience could triumph over numbers. In Russia, silence returned. Official statements made no mention of Prosk, but independent observers knew. Satellite images captured the retreating units, the burned-out remains of vehicles, and the faint outlines of trenches abandoned in haste. The psychological toll was enormous. For Ukrainian forces, the defense became legend. Soldiers across the Eastern Front adopted a new saying, "Hold like Prosk." And for the Azov Brigade, the message was simple. Victory wasn't just survival. Victory was making sure the enemy remembered why they lost. In the end, the story of Prosk isn't just about tactics or technology, it's about will. The kind of will that turns fear into defiance, exhaustion into resolve, and silence into strength. The battlefield today lies quiet once more. The charred wrecks have cooled, the smoke has drifted away, but the memory of that fight remains etched into the soil. Each crater, each ruined house, each name written on a helmet, a reminder of the cost of freedom. For the world watching, Prosk stands as proof that Ukraine's defenders are not merely fighting for land, they're fighting for existence, for the right to decide their own future. As one Azov soldier later said, standing beside the burned skeleton of a Russian armored vehicle, "I came to take our homes, we showed them what it cost." And that is the truth of this war, not just a clash of armies, but of convictions. A war where courage, discipline, and unity can still defy the odds. So remember this story, because somewhere even now another village like Prosk is waiting, another unit is preparing, and another ambush is being planned in the shadows.